Well, look, it's been a really great visit to Tairawhiti, and it's an area that I've spent a bit of time in my past life, and when I was at Air New Zealand, obviously working with economic development agencies here, working with Ngāti Porou on different joint ventures that we had together as well. So it's an area I love and really appreciate. This morning I've actually met with Manaaki Tairāwhiti, and I have to say what an outstanding organisation that is, doing some of the best work I've seen in social services in New Zealand, full stop. And so I'd like to come back here and understand more work about what they're doing and just how they're going about getting results and dealing with some of the big problems that we have across the whole of New Zealand, but they're actually finding ways to deal with that here in Tairawhiti. And so how do we reduce addiction? How do we reduce family violence? And so that's been really, really interesting. And then we've got some more conversations and meetings for the rest of the day. So look, this is a great region. The real challenges are a few. I think roading is a major issue here, and that's partly because the government has really cancelled its investment, the investment that our government had around the roads. And what we've seen is roads deteriorating, and as a result the response seems to be let's lower the speed limit rather than actually let's repair and renew the roads and build better roads, which is what's needed to happen. They're important because you can live in this part of the world and this part of New Zealand, but you want to know that you can connect to other parts of New Zealand really effectively and actually ultimately to the rest of the world. And so to be able to live here in Gisborne, for example, and have a great quality of life, but to be able to run a business from here that does business in Auckland or does business even in Sydney or other parts of the world, those connections are really important. And as we actually move to a world where we might have more electric vehicles or more hydrogen trucks, the reality is we still need roads, and so it's important that we keep those investments up. And I think the second big issue is really worker shortages. We've got a lot of great businesses here in horticulture and agriculture, and they're actually really struggling to get the workers that they need. And that means they just can't get the opportunity, they can't maximise the opportunity for those businesses. So those are the things where New Zealand's been very poor on its immigration settings, and it hasn't been able to get the skilled workers that we need or critical workers we need into the country.
Yeah. Would you like to talk to me a bit about the housing crisis? How is national planning on dealing with the housing crisis? Because in Tairawhiti we seem to have a housing shortage.
Yeah, housing is a problem across Tairawhiti but also across the whole of New Zealand. And there's four parts to it. The first is, home ownership is really difficult and has been sliding, and that's because under this government we've had a $400,000 increase in the average house price to over $1 million across New Zealand now. It's huge. Secondarily, and linked to that is also interest rates are going up because they have to go up to fight inflation, which we think the government could be doing a lot more about as we deal with this cost of living crisis. And so now homeowners are having to pay a lot more on their interest bills, tens of thousands of dollars more, because interest rates are going up. If you can't buy a house, you need to rent one, and actually rents have been going up $150 a week under this government. So it costs you almost $7,500 after tax to rent the same house you had 4 years ago. And a lot of that's to do with the fact that the government put a lot of taxes on landlords, meaning they extended this bright line test, removed interest deductibility, and even despite the Inland Revenue Department saying, please don't do that, it's going to add a lot of cost, it actually has ended up doing that. And the third thing is there's been a quadrupling of the number of people who can't rent a house because it's expensive. You end up wanting to go to get a state house, and there's been a quadrupling of people on the state house wait list as a result, from 6,000 I think to 27,000 people now. And the final thing is obviously we had 4,500 kids wake up in motel accommodation, emergency accommodation across New Zealand this morning, and that's really tragic. So all the issues are linked, they're all quite complex. The first thing is we've got to unlock land and be able to build houses much faster than we've been doing, and we are some of the slowest people in developed countries to consent land and to get building consents up and running and happening. We need to deal with the interest rates because that's ultimately about how we deal with inflation down the road. And there's some legislation the government passed that's not made it good for people to get loans called the triple CFA that needs to be fixed. The landlord thing I talked about in terms of how we could lower costs and rents. And I think we could encourage some people to come in and actually do what we call rent-to-build schemes, or build-to-rent schemes, and have different rental products and housing available. And the last piece is on the state housing piece. We need to open it up to community housing providers, not just leave it all to Kāinga Ora and state housing. We want them to do as much as they can, and we also need the community housing providers to open up and build more houses. Salvation Army, different Māori property trusts that really can build those products as well.
So do you think that National can sort of facilitate local community, initiatives that are happening in Tairawhiti at the moment when you come into power? How is that?
Well, the big difference between us and the Labour Party is that they really believe in centralisation and control, that we run everything from Wellington. And we've seen that with our polytechnics. We've had 16 polytechnics all merged into one. We've got 20 DHBs being merged into one big health bureaucracy in Wellington. We've got the 3 waters being taken out of local councils into 4 big mega entities based in Wellington. And so the upshot is that the government's added 14,000 more bureaucrats to Wellington in less than 4 years. And that's a huge amount of bureaucracy and centralisation that's taking root. We in the National Party have a different approach. We think that there are 3 big actors in society: community organisations like Manaaki Tairāwhiti, who do an amazing job, measure outcomes, know the people, know how to get the money to the right places and actually change people's lives. We see businesses have a key role to play because they can move with great speed and scale, and we think government set up the frameworks, and the 3 actors need to work together. So it's a different approach.